Today we're going to be going over the savior and the destroyer of woodworking projects. It is called medium density fiberboard, but more commonly known as MDF. There are a ton of reasons to use it and not to use it, but today we're going to be talking about 5 of each. Now, when most people think of MDF, they automatically gravitate towards the negative aspect, so let's go ahead and cover 5 of the negatives of MDF first. Water. That is what everybody's going to bring up when MDF is first mentioned for a woodworking project. Is this going to be near water? Is there going to be moisture at all? Is it going to be an area that is incredibly humid? Because MDF is going to fail the second that it is around moisture. And of course, there are a ton of different options when it comes to MDF overall. There's lightweight versions, there are moisture resistant versions, there are a ton of different things, but what we're going over today is the main stuff that you're going to find in the big box store as well as in most of your lumber suppliers. And the first biggest thing that you need to pay attention to is this going to come in contact with water? Next up, MDF is incredibly heavy. If you have ever gone to the store to pick up a sheet of plywood as well as a sheet of MDF, you will notice that the MDF is much, much heavier, not only for you moving your material around, but also for your final project. Your final project is going to have a lot of heft to it, which is why a lot of people stay away from MDF. Next up is health concerns. If you have ever cut MDF not wearing a mask, you have put yourself in danger. And everybody on YouTube, whenever they see a ton of MDF dust around, they say, I know I can smell that image through the screen. And it's just the truth. MDF is nasty, it gets over everything. And the way that MDF is made, the simplistic version, is a ton of sawdust and adhesives with a lot of pressure to be able to form these sheets. And as you're cutting that, you're just reintroducing that into the air. And if you don't have proper dust collection as well as ventilation in your shop, MDF cutting that for a long time can be a major health concern. So number 4, I'm going to call screw holding, but this is going to apply to a few different things when it really concerns joinery overall with MDF. Now, screws is going to be the most common failure because it is going to be very easy to strip out the screw hole location for MDF, but more importantly, if you have 2 pieces that are joining and you're putting in screws, if there's any type of leverage on that, it's going to give out much, much quicker in MDF than it is going to even in plywood, but more certainly a whole lot easier than hardwood overall. And then number 5 is a little bit more of beauty as in the eye of the beholder, but the most common thing that people talk about MDF is just it looks cheap, it's ugly, and it's not something that aesthetically pleases the eye. I specifically do not agree with this point, but a lot of people do. I love the look of MDF. It's just really hard to incorporate it into a project, knowing that there are a lot of places that MDF can fail. So now that we've gone over those 5 options, let's talk about why MDF is actually good. The absolute number 1 reason to use MDF is just going to be money. All right, so I'm from the Atlanta area, and if you're going to go in and buy some 3/4 inch Baltic birch or MDF, specifically from Peach State Lumber, which is an incredibly reputable dealer here in Atlanta, anybody walking off the street can get a piece of 3/4 inch 4x8 at $116. And in that same shop, to get a piece of 3/4 inch 4x8 piece of MDF, right now, $36. So there you go. You can pretty much buy 3 pieces of MDF for the same cost of Baltic birch. Now, obviously that comparison is a little bit false when you're looking at, well, Baltic birch does specific stuff. If you're looking to prototype stuff, MDF is the way to go. Right here is a dice tray that was cut out of MDF. This was one of the mystery files from a past video. So tolerance is incredibly important when you're CNC machining things. So this is a great way to be able to save on a ton of money and get a really, really good result. Now, what we were talking about earlier with the screw holding and the joinery portion of things, this has just been sitting in my shop. And because it has been sitting in the shop around a bunch of moisture, it has been expanding and contracting while this was together, and it has broken loose. So obviously this is going to be a cost savings, but the negative is bringing in water as well as any type of joinery. There is a possibility for failure. Number 2, MDF is smooth. This entire surface right here is so easy to paint. I think you're going to get very little pushback in the woodworking community when you talk about how easy it is to paint MDF. If you're looking to paint the face of the project, it is just so simple and it's going to look incredible. Now, when it comes to any type of fresh cuts that you're making in the MDF, you really want to pay attention to sanding it really, really well, because that area is going to soak up paint and it might cause a little bit of issue in the future if you're just trying to put on 1 coat and be done with it. Number 3, it cuts like butter. This stuff really does. When you're having to pay attention to your feeds and speeds on your CNC machine, or if you're just using a table saw overall, MDF is something that you're going to be able to aggressively cut and not worry about bits breaking or anything binding up, because it is very, very easy to machine. So number 4 is availability, and that kind of goes hand in hand with price. Now in the United States, MDF is just the color of MDF. You see it, you know what it is. Across the seas over in Europe, y'all have a ton of different options when it concerns color of MDF, and I've always been really jealous of that, from greens and blues to yellows, blacks and grays. I really think that that addresses and eliminates number 5 on the do not do's for MDF, because it creates a different option for aesthetics, and it's not just something that people know what it is automatically. Y'all might be pretty used to that over in Germany specifically, but over here in the United States, I'm really jealous. And then lastly, number 5, before we jump into what we're going to turn this into today, is size. Now, earlier when I talked about this 3/4 inch Baltic birch in MDF, there are a ton of different options for both of these when it comes to sheet goods. But specifically when you're talking about MDF, not only are you able to purchase it at a lumber yard like I purchased mine, but you're also able to get it from craft stores like Hobby Lobby. You can purchase it in a ton of different sizes depending on the things that you're looking to make. If you're willing to look past all the negatives of MDF and look at the positives, you can quickly and easily see that it is cheap, it is easy to pick up. Even if you don't have a truck, you can buy it in smaller sections. It is really easy to machine, and it's something that you can go out and purchase today based on the availability anywhere in the world. Now today we're going to be using it to make a classic woodworking project, especially if you have a CNC machine, and I've gone ahead and painted this side black. As you can see, it is perfectly smooth and it is ready to be used on the CNC machine. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're actually going to be making. Now, about all this talk about MDF and how things are different in the United States as well as all over the world, there is absolutely no better time to make a conversion chart sign for the wall. We're going to be going from imperial to metric, from inches to millimeters, and we're going to be using this piece of MDF right here. Now, as you can see, I've already pre-painted this matte black because I think that is going to look wonderful once we use our V-bit to be able to pierce in and show that MDF. It's really going to make the letters pop. Now, right now we're looking at this sideways, but once it goes on the CNC machine, we're going to turn it 90 degrees, which means that our X is going to be 16 inches, our Y is going to be 31 inches, and our Z is going to be 0.5 inches. Now, this is exactly what you need for this project. This piece is a little bit bigger than that, so we're going to have a little bit of waste left over, but we wanted to make sure that you could make this with a 32-inch wide machine, which is the smallest version of the onefinity. Also, when you're looking at the thickness or the Z of your material, I have it set at 0.5 because that's what we're using today. And everything that you're about to see, you also could laser engrave as well. So you could just take the SVGs or the DXF and you'd be able to engrave all of this on a much thinner piece of material. But when you are spread out in a larger area like this, you really want to make sure that you set your Z height specifically for your V-bit as good as possible, because there might be areas that you're really engraving deep and correctly, and there might be areas that it's really skinning over and not really penetrating the material the way that you need to. Obviously, a way to be able to make this a little bit better is for your text to be larger. The larger your text, the deeper the engraving for your V-bit you're going to get. And that's another reason why we made this chart so big, is so that we're not having a ton of little tiny areas that might or might not come out. We've got a very large area, the text is bigger, therefore we're going to get deeper penetration with our V-bits overall. So first and foremost, we're going to be running our 60-degree V-bit, and we're going to be doing all of our text. As you can see, we've got all of the numbers, the different ways that we're converting these numbers, as well as our logo up at the top. We're going to be doing a little bit of a border, and after that we're going to be putting in our downtown Jenny. Our downtown Jenny is not really the best or worst bit for this, but it is one of the 3 bits that you need to CNC with me, and the only 3 bits that you need to be able to create projects that you see on this channel. So one of the great things about the down cut bit, it is forcing material down, and all that MDF dust is going to compact in the channel that we just made, which means that it is going to be a whole lot harder for this material to move around. And we will have our project cut out, and it will be ready to put a roundover on. We're just going to be using our 3/16" roundover bit and our handheld router, quickly doing the outside profile so that we can have just a nice break to the edge. And we are left with this. It is beautiful, but it also has 13 mistakes in it. So if you're the first person to write down all 13 mistakes in the comments down below, well, you win the pride of being the first. So I have been playing around with climb milling and conventional milling, and unfortunately I have things set up for climb milling on the V-bit carving. What that did was it left me with a few of these like fuzzies, and by a few I mean every single time it touched it, it left me with fuzzies. And I just came back with a white Brillo pad and then just took off all of those, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out overall. You can see right here that the text is still super duper sharp, and that white Brillo pad did take care of a lot of those fuzzies. Probably like 95% of them. We have got the CNC with me logo, our conversion chart, fraction to decimal and then millimeter to decimal as well, and decimal being the main thing that you're going to be using for your tool pathing. But more importantly, all of this was done to show you that you can get incredibly good consistent results using MDF. As you can see right here, we have a really consistent thickness in our lines for our V-bit carving, because we started off with a wasteboard that was incredibly flat, and then we put a piece of material down on it that also was incredibly flat. In our science class growing up, we had those tables with like the huge black tops and then like the wooden legs and everything. This reminds me of that. Now, obviously, if you're getting these files off of CNC with me, they are not going to include some of the mistakes that hopefully y'all have been able to find here. If you haven't found at least one of them, start looking because they're here. Otherwise, what I'm going to have to do in order to remedy all those mistakes is I'm going to be painting this black. I'm going to set up my file so that I am zeroing from the center of the material, and then I'm just going to rerun everything so that I have the proper dimensions. But that actually brings us to this week's mystery file, because when Mitz sent over his mystery G code, he said, this is meant to hang right next to your sign. And another cool thing is you only have to use one bit for it, so we loaded up our 60-degree V-bit and then started carving. And I immediately regretted not painting the mystery file to match this, because I very quickly saw exactly what Mitz was doing. This is this week's mystery file, and as you can see, that is a lot of math. When I first got in touch with Mitz and I said, is that real? He said, of course not, Hamilton. It's just something I found online to show you that this is the hard way and this is the easy way. So obviously, thank you as always for Mitz to sending over some incredible stuff. If you haven't checked it out, we do have a few of the mystery files available over on cncwithme.com. As more become available, more will be uploaded. You can find those files through your dashboard. But you really only need to put in one bit. So if you're looking for a project that are brand new in the shop and you want to be able just to get a little bit of confidence behind your CNC machine, go ahead and try this one out first. Put in a 60-degree V-bit and go ahead and just watch it go. This thing did take quite a long time on the CNC machine because there is a ton of text. And if you've set everything up exactly the way that you should and you run your CNC machine, you're going to get an incredibly good, crisp result just like this. Now there is one more. What was... how clumsy of me. So if you want these files, the ones that actually don't break on you, you know, the dice tray ones, check out Vernon Hinkle's latest video. He's an instructor on CNC with me. It will be linked down below, and well, I'll see you next Friday. Goodbye.